Mm. So earlier today, about, well, actually it was only like maybe half an hour ago, 45 minutes ago, I finished this hour-long video that I recorded on photo booth on my Mac, and I was getting so into it, and I was like, yeah, this is going to be really good to put out, because yeah, I was just loving doing it, and loads of interesting topics came up. And then when it ended, when I pressed stop, there wasn't enough space to save it on my Mac, so it deleted the whole thing. So I'd just been talking for an hour about all these different topics: healing anxiety and the challenges of life and awakening. And then it didn't save. But it didn't feel like a waste at all. A little part of me was like, tried to find it for a couple of minutes, just because I thought it would have been nice to put out. But it didn't feel like I'd wasted my time. Because actually making these videos and speaking about matters like this is my favorite thing to do, because it fills my heart with so much love. And I don't know what I'm going to talk about, or if I'm going to say anything interesting, but I enjoy doing it, so. And the main thing that I've gotten from all of my teachers, and I've had a lot of teachers, but I've had a few main ones. My main teacher, Craig, who I just love so much. I've spoken to him for, I don't know how many hours. I've been chatting to him for a few years. Probably on average once every 2 weeks. And lots of stuff has come up. I mean, we've cried together and laughed together. Mostly laughed, at least in the last couple of years. And he's shared so much wisdom with me. All from the challenges of his own life, all the stuff that he went through when he was on the path, and all the challenges that he went through. He shared all of that with me. But the main thing has been the sharing of our hearts. He shared his heart with me. Now, I know there was a receptivity within me for this love to arise within my heart. And Craig's got such a big heart, such a beautiful heart, that the main thing that I've gotten out of our relationship for the last 3.5 years is this transmission of the heart. Over time, through hours and hours of laughing together and not singing. We haven't done that yet. And, crying, That's mostly me, but he's had a few tears come. And just sharing from our hearts has allowed me to come into my own heart and has given me the ability to speak from my own heart instead of speaking from my conditioned mind. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what information you get off a teacher or a guide on the path. Well, of course, it does matter a bit. But the main thing, I feel, is the transmission of their heart, is the sharing of their heart. At first, we look for answers within the words. At least our mind is looking for answers within the words. Yet while the mind is busy watching, thinking it has to figure it out, trying to figure life out by getting advice from teachers, something else is happening below the surface that the mind isn't really aware of. And that is that a subtle, sometimes not so subtle, sharing of presence, sharing of love, sharing of the heart is happening between the people, the person who's speaking and the one who's listening. Or if you're in conversation, there's a sharing between the two of you when you're speaking and conversing. And you take a different transmission from everybody that you speak to. So you might have heard the phrase, you become the 5 people who you spend the most time with. So a few years ago, the person that I spent the most time with was a guy called Rupert Spira. And I'm not sure he even knows who I am. I met him once. I've met him a few times when I put my hand up and asked questions at his retreats, but there's hundreds of people there. And then I met him once, I was really shy and just said hi to him when he was walking past. We had like a little interaction there. But mostly, I spent hours and hours and hours listening to his videos. And the mind was, in a way, trying to figure out what he was saying a little bit. But it was very obvious from the first video I watched that it wasn't about the words. When he was speaking, I came into a space of ease because he was living from what he was trying to convey through words, which was is a kind of peaceful, transcendent space. it's interesting to me how each teacher conveys a different frequency, a different fragrance, a different flavor. I'm not sure why I'm talking about this now, but I find it interesting how when I listen to Craig and speak with Craig, I gain this love in my heart. And when I listen to Rupert, I come into a place of total peace, clarity. And then another one of my teachers, Salvador Poe, who could be seen as controversial because he has a very could say radical message, which is just be done seeking. Come to see who you really are as awareness, as the knowing of experience. Come to see that knowing which needs nothing. That knowing which is settled and totally at peace and at rest, already here. So when I bring an image of him into my mind right now, I experience a softening, an opening, and a relaxation, a deep relaxation into just the goodness of this moment. I'm just thinking of the other teachers. Ananta Kranti's coming to my mind because she's been, her and Craig have been my main teachers. I mean, I've had a lot of personal contact with them. So when Ananta comes into my consciousness, I experience kind of just a deep strength of presence. And people probably get different things from her. But for me, it was the reason I went to her is because I saw that she'd been through incredible suffering. And I was still going through a lot of suffering, although I was out of the crisis that I was in, mostly. But yeah, a hell of a lot of struggle has been moving through me while I've been on retreats with her. So I've spent hundreds of hours with her on these retreats, sitting within my own struggle. Yet because of her strength of presence, because of the hell that she walked through, she has this immense strength of presence, which is totally there in the midst of all of this movement and suffering. Because people who go to her retreats really bring heavy stuff, deep traumas. And yet she's so there. So what I get from her is like a deep strength of presence. The analogy is coming to my mind. I think Gangaji used this one, where you're on top of a boat, like imagine a big wooden ship with one of those masts, and you know you can stand on that thing at the top while the boat's rocking around. Imagine that it's like a really stormy sea and you're going over all these waves and the waves are like splashing into your face and you're just standing there on top of this mast, but you're standing so strong, just taking all these waves, and you know that you're held by this boat. And you're just strapped. You're strapped to the boat, so you can't fall off, and you're just taking all these waves into the face, but you're just staying strong. I'm not sure if that's a good analogy. Maybe I said it wrong, but you get the sense of that. So that's what I've taken from her so far. Yeah, I have a feeling that when the struggling and fighting has really dissipated within me in a fuller way, that there's going to be something else. I've got a feeling that I don't know, but maybe there will be, maybe I will come to know her presence in a more clear way. I think I'll be more receptive to the deeper levels of her being, and the softer levels of her being at some stage. But we'll see. So I don't know why I'm just going through all my teachers. It's fun to see what I've learned. One is coming to my mind, a guy called John Butler. He's like pretty famous on YouTube. And I went to see him twice. He lives only like 45 minutes from my parents' home. So he's like an amazing guy. He's in his 80s, maybe late 80s, could be early 80s. Don't want to offend him. But he's one of these guys who's just had a really steady spiritual path from a young age. So he hasn't been through really intense traumas and stuff, although he's certainly struggled in a way. He's had depression and midlife crisis sort of experiences. But generally, he started meditating when he was a young man. And he just says, slowly, slowly, steadily, steadily, you just keep moving forwards. And over time, gradually, you come to know this still, silent space inside. This silence. And he's always in a church. He's like kind of a bit Christian. So he's in this little church in a English village called Bakewell. And you can just go there and meditate with him. So I went a couple of times and I got a sense of just such easefulness and like a very subtle devotion to almost like I want to use the word Christian. Like, when you walk into a Christian church, and even if you're not religious, and I'm not religious, you feel this kind of spark of divinity inside. And it's like you can just be held within that. It's almost angelic. It's angelic. And he transmits that. Check out his videos. He's a cool guy. And there's something he said that really stuck with me, which was, someone asked him, because he gets questions from Christians and people think he's really Christian, even though he's just a little bit, he's like a Christian mystic, really. Someone asked him, have you been saved by Jesus? And he sits and starts thinking. Or he waits for a response to come. And he says, I don't really like to think of myself as having been saved. And again, he uses Christian language, so don't be put off by that. But he says, I prefer to think of myself as a sinner, because I have an endless capacity for foolishness. Yet, God has an endless capacity for love. I'm really paraphrasing now. Let me try and get to the essence of what you're saying. I have an endless capacity for foolishness. So that's just his sweet humility. Like, I'm a sinner, I'm a fool. I prefer to think of myself as a sinner, because if you think of yourself as being saved, I am this awake being who's totally made it and totally been saved. Then there's no humility within that. Whereas if you think of yourself as a foolish sinner, and not in a self-detrimenting way, but if you just think, yeah, I'm an imperfect human, then you have an endless capacity to accept the forgiveness of God. Let me try and word that in a way that isn't so Christian, because to think that you need to be forgiven by God could be taken the wrong way. So I'll try and explain that in a slightly different way. God, I won't use the word God, grace, love, moves towards ignorance. Grace moves towards pain and suffering and foolishness. So it's good to have foolishness within you. It's good to make mistakes and to think of yourself as imperfect, because then you always have this slight devotion to this greater love and intelligence, which has an endless capacity to come into you and hold you and soothe you and love you. Because it's through our foolishness that grace may pour into us. And when I first heard that, and I'm feeling that transmission now, yeah, I just got this sense of this beautiful humility whereby we bow down to this love, this care that is available to us. And my teacher Craig talks a lot about this as well. In my opinion, in my eyes, he's an incredibly realized being. He's opened up to deep non-dual realization. Yet he's always pointing us back to the fact that we can also have a personal relationship with the divine. We can also bow down to a higher grace, so we can know ourselves, we can know our true nature, we can know our essence. Yet at the same time, we can also be in relationship with a higher divinity. Let's see how long I've been recording this for. 28 minutes. So I'm really enjoying going through my teachers and thinking about all the different things I've taken from them. So I'll just carry on with that. Although I almost don't want to move away from this speaking about John Butler, because I'm enjoying so much this transmission that's coming in. This, like, it's Christian. And I'm not religious, but it feels like Christian. I imagine if somebody's Christian, and even if they're not, even if they're totally egoic, totally trapped in their sense of egoic identity, I imagine for many of them, going to church every week and being devoted to Christianity gives them this sense of this transmission of goodness within their hearts. Because there is a certain essence to those churches. There is a certain essence within that tradition, which is beautiful. And John Butler totally embodies that. Even though he's not Christian within his beliefs, he doesn't believe in, some of the silly things that the Christian church preaches. But he embodies this sparkling jewel. He embodies the Christian heart. And you just imagine yourself walking into one of those, like an old English church, forget all your judgments about it. Just imagine yourself walking in. Maybe imagine yourself going there when you were a child, if you ever went as a child, walking into one of these churches, and just get a sense for how that makes your heart feel. It might just be subtle, and you might think, oh, this is like a childhood memory. But can you just feel that spark of divinity? So I'll move on to the next teacher. And I've been with maybe 20 teachers. I won't go through them all, but some a lot more than others. And like I say, Craig and Ananta, my main ones, and then Rupert as well, even though it was mostly online. And Adyashanti. And Salvador Poe was a big influence, but let's see what comes up about Adyashanti. I've been on retreat with him twice, silent retreat, and I've been to see him once recently in London. Now, I spent many hours listening to his guided meditations. And for me, the main thing that I've taken from all of the teachings, all of his teachings, was this one phrase. Let me see if I can say it properly. But it's within one of his books, Falling into Grace. He says, even if you're struggling, even if your mind is trying to figure all of this out, can you not see that peace is already present within your experience? Even if you're struggling, even if your mind is trying to figure all of this out, can you not see that peace is already present within your experience? Because the seeking mind believes that peace is something it's going to attain in the future. Yet, if peace is a state that we attain in the future, by definition, it cannot be permanent, because anything that comes must go. Therefore, any state of peace that we attain in the future will, by definition, have to go. So peace must be present within our experience. Hearing some funny noises outside. There's a guy I'm in Bali. He's cleaning just a little area outside. So yeah, let me just get back to that. Even before you try to make peace happen, even if your mind is trying to figure all of this out, is it not true that peace is already present within your experience? And that one line allowed me to see that even though I was struggling, there was something here that was peaceful. And so anytime I would sit down and there would be this struggle and this efforting to try and seek and find some sort of peace, that sentence would just repeat within my mind. And peace, the peace that's always already here, would reveal itself to me. And this was self-inquiry. It was the same process that happens when you ask yourself the question, who am I? Ramana's question, who am I? It's the same goal, to allow this peace, the peace of your being, to reveal itself to you. That question, who am I? For me, it could get a bit messy inside, because it used to trip my mind out a bit. So even saying it now can kind of make my mind wobble a bit. So I just need to let that one go. Because my mind was really trying to get all of this spirituality stuff. So I used to ask myself questions like, who am I? And it would be like a panicked self trying to find it. But even though my mind was a crazy fucking like seeking on turbocharge, all of these inquiry questions were still working. They were giving me these glimpses of recognition. Glimpses, glimpses, glimpses. And so even if you have this crazy mind, it doesn't matter. Like, actually, that can help. Because if there's a lot of craziness happening within you, when you do notice and feel the peace within your experience, it's more obvious because there's more of a contrast. And you value that so much, because it's a relief from the suffering. Holy shit, there's an earthquake happening right now. Let's see if we can be spiritual about an earthquake happening. There's fear moving through my nervous system right now, and thoughts of the house falling down. I've never been in an earthquake before. Maybe I should go outside. I think I'm all right though. Whoa. That was crazy. The whole room was shaking. Yeah, there's adrenaline moving through my body now, and my hips. I feel so much energy in my hips, so alive. I can feel like energy moving up my spine. I was there was yeah, a real survival fear came into my body then. Anyway, what was I talking about? I don't know. Kind of got distracted by the earthquake that's happening. Was happening. So I'm going to take that as a sign from the universe that it's time to end this video and go and get a nasi goreng for dinner. So thank you for listening. If anyone's listening live, I know I've only got 5 likes on this page so far, but I think hopefully if people are interested and they join the page later, they can watch this video. So maybe there's a few more of you, but maybe not. Even if no one listens to this, it's yeah, it just lights up my heart to speak in this way. And it was really funny that there was an earthquake at the end. Okay.